conversations and always appreciate the opportunity to share ideas with you, Mr. President. And I especially enjoyed our time that Jill and I and Brigitte had last night in our visit. First time I've gone to dinner, a private dinner in Washington in a long, long time. And but I had the protection of the French government with me. But all kidding aside, France is one of our strongest partners, and historically, but one of our strongest partners and our most capable allies. And Emmanuel has also become a friend, in addition to being president of that great country. And we share the same values, and we remain the core common agenda that we address all challenges together. And occasionally we have some slight differences, but never in a fundamental way, so thus far, at least as long as I've been in Washington, and that's been more than a couple of years. Today, we reaffirm that France and the United States, together with all our allies, all our NATO allies and European Union, the G7, stand as strong as ever against Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. We talked a lot about that in our bilateral meeting. And we'll continue the strong support to the people of Ukraine as they defend their homes and their families and their sovereignty and territorial integrity against Russian aggression, which has been incredibly brutal. I knew Russia was, but I didn't anticipate them being as brutal as they have been and what they've been doing. Many of the reporters in this room have been there themselves and covered from there, and they know what it's like. Today, we reaffirm that, as I said, we're going to stand together against this brutality. And we'll continue the strong support for the Ukrainian people as they defend their homes and their families and their nurseries, their hospitals, their sovereignty, their integrity, and against Russian aggression. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, for welcoming that the people of France have given to over 100,000 Ukrainian refugees. It's a mark of who you are as a people. And they're fleeing Putin's just barbarism. Putin thinks that he can crush the will of all those who oppose his imperial ambitions. But attacking civilian infrastructures in Ukraine, choking off energy to Europe, and to drive up prices, exacerbating the food crisis, that's hurting very vulnerable people, not just in Ukraine, but around the world. And he's not going to succeed. President Macron and I have resolved that we're going to continue working together to hold Russia accountable for their actions and to mitigate the global impacts of Putin's war on the rest of the world. The United States is helping Europe diversify away from Russian natural gas in the immediate term, and while accelerating our clean energy transitions, and we're going to continue working in close partnership with Europe as we move forward. I welcome the progress we've already made in many of these issues through the U.S.-EU Task Force on Energy Security. And today, we also committed to deepening cooperation between France and the United States on civil nuclear energy through our bilateral clean energy partnership. Around the world, France and the United States are working to strengthen stability and security. We share the vision, the same vision in the Indo-Pacific. We're looking for one Indo-Pacific that's free and open, prosperous and secure. And we're going to continue to strengthen our cooperation to defend core international principles in the Indo-Pacific, including freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight. We're working together to support the Middle East that is more integrated, peaceful, and prosperous. And we want to particularly thank President Macron for his efforts to help bring about the historic maritime boundaries agreement between Israel and Lebanon. We also stand with the people of Iran. And then the French and the United States are working together and hold accountable those responsible for the human rights abuses to counter Iran's support for Russia's war and to ensure that Iran does not ever acquire a nuclear weapon. And as we in the United States are looking forward to hosting the upcoming U.S.-African Leaders Summit, President Macron and I understand Africa's influence and importance, and he has much to add. France has much to add. We're also going to deepen our engagement, listening to and working with our African partners to help strengthen the governance and security and economic opportunities across the continent and to tackle the global challenges of our time. Our partnership also extends to cooperating in outer space, from coordinating defenses from coordinating defense of our space activities to strengthening scientific efforts to monitor Earth's changing climate. And we had a detailed discussion of the Inflation Reduction Act. I know none of you are curious about that, but we did talk about that a good deal. The United States and Europe share the goal of making bold investments in clean energy to meet the challenges of the climate crisis and to build the industries of the future, including batteries and green hydrogen. We agreed to discuss practical steps to coordinate and align our approaches so that we can strengthen and secure the supply chains, manufacturing, and innovation on both sides of the Atlantic. We ask our teams to follow up on this part as ongoing U.S.-EU consultation continues, because we can work out some of the differences that exist. I'm confident. France and the United States are also leading efforts to strengthen the global health and global health security. President Macron visits falls on the World AIDS Day, and I want to particularly highlight our joint effort to reach our goal of ending the AIDS epidemic by 2030. That is a goal we set, a goal we're going to accomplish, and a goal we're sticking with. And to do it, we have all the tools we need. We just have to make finishing this fight a top priority for not just the two of us, but for other nations as well. And that's why I'm proud to take the baton from you, President Macron, and host the Global Fund's 7th Replenishment Conference this year, building on France's strong record of leadership. We've raised $15.7 billion with the United States and France as the two largest contributors to the Global Fund, and it's going to save millions, literally millions of lives. If I listed all the areas where cooperation between France and the United States were delivering meaningful progress, we'd be here until dinner time. But so let me just close by highlighting our long-term investment to deepen the ties between our people, particularly the U.S.-French Fulbright program, which celebrates its 75th anniversary and has facilitated thousands of exchanges between our students, our educators, over the last decades. It's been critical to our relationship. It's a key part of ensuring that the future of this vital alliance remains strong and vibrant for generations to come. So, Emmanuel, thank you again for all that our nations are doing together in cooperation. My administration has built our foreign policy around the strength of our alliances, and France is the very heart of that commitment. So, merci, my friend, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And as I used to say in the body I worked in a long time, in the United States Senate, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, dear Joe, thank you ever so much for these words that very much reflect the discussions we just had. But most importantly, thank you very much for your warm welcome. And indeed, together with my wife, Brigitte, we were very pleased to share this moment together with you and your spouse last night. And let me tell you how honored and moved we are, both my delegation and myself, to be here, invited by you on the occasion of this first state visit by your administration. And regarding this relationship, we said it this morning, and you just said it again, this heritage is based on life sacrifice, on so much. And I would like to say that over centuries, every time there was something vital at stake, we were there, one for the other, without any doubt, without any hesitation. And this is very much what should structure the rest of it. It is this spirit that is prevailing in the current circumstances since last February. And I did not repeat what President Biden perfectly described. And dear Joe, indeed, you very much describe what we're doing together in Ukraine. We clearly condemn this war immediately. We led all the diplomatic actions to condemn this war, the war crimes committed by Russia on the Ukrainian soil, and we support both the Ukrainian army that is resisting, the Ukrainian population resisting as well. And please allow me here to very much thank the United States of America for all the support provided, because this war is impacting the European soil even more directly, and you've chosen to invest so much to contribute to this joint effort. In this context, our discussion this morning was an opportunity to confirm the initiatives we will be taking once again in the coming weeks and months to keep supporting, to strengthen our support to the Ukrainian troops and to enable them to resist. We also agreed to continue to work together to support the Ukrainian people, to help them resist, because we can very well see today that the Russian war effort is very much targeting the civilian infrastructure, bringing even more violence to try and make the Ukrainian people desperate and make it impossible for them to survive this winter. This is the reason why we decided to organize on the 13th of December a conference to support Ukraine, and very much would like to thank you for the close cooperation in preparing for that event. And we're working in close cooperation with President Zelensky based on his 10-point plan that he proposed, and I also would like to take this opportunity to commend the efforts of President Zelensky to try and find a way, a path to peace while leading this heroic resistance they've been organizing for 10 months. We always agreed, help Ukraine resist, never give up on anything in the UN Charter, prevent any risk of escalation in this conflict, and make sure that when the time comes, on the basis of conditions to be set by Ukrainians themselves, help build peace. And I believe your positions being so clear, it is something important to us, because we're both working for sustainable peace. We also talked about the direct and indirect consequences of this war, including on food security and energy security for the entire planet. And our joint initiatives within the G20, the G7, very much go in that direction. And we also recall this morning all of that, all we're doing to try and help all countries to weather the consequences of the conflict on their economies. This morning we also had an excellent discussion on the IRA and the recent pieces of legislation adopted by the American administration. And like President Biden just said, we agreed to resynchronize our approaches, our agendas, in order to invest in critical emerging industries, semiconductors, batteries, hydrogen, everything that is absolutely decisive, because as a matter of fact, we share the same vision and the same willingness. President Biden wishes to create more industrial jobs in the long run for his country, and to build a strong industry and secure your supplies, and this is very much our approach as well. And this is the reason why we task our teams to continue this work in close cooperation, coordination, to find solutions on the topics we identified. And of course we will coordinate with all of the Europeans and with you, to have an agenda that will only bring more jobs, industry jobs in the United States as well as in Europe, and guarantee the strength and the resilience of our supply chains, and to do that with a strong integration. This European work is also the one we want to deliver on all of the issues on our agenda. And President, you just said it, what we would like to do as well is work on a number of topics of the future. And yesterday we had some sessions, working sessions, and our ministers and teams have been working as well, so that we could approve an agenda of hope and for the future. Like I said this morning, in the space industry, research, exploration, but as well the industry of the future, civil nuclear industry, here again with some common research projects, in particular on the most advanced technique, because I believe I can say on behalf of both of us that the civil nuclear industry is very much part of the energy mix in which we believe in, that will not only bring jobs, but enables us as well to have a secure supply and to meet our climate objectives. We also talked about the quantum issues
justement
with a number of
d'innovation. Là aussi, nos
stakeholders,
délégations
innovation, and
sont là
here's
pour
where our
illustrer
delegations
tout le
are
travail
here
qui
to
est fait pour
illustrate
continuer
the
d'avancer
work
sur un
that is
agenda commun.
taking place so that we can
Enfin,
deliver on that
c'est
common
aussi
agenda.
nos engagements sur les grands sujets
Lastly, we
internationaux
also have
qui,
all of our commitments on the major
irriguent
international
notre relation.
challenges, which are very much,
Je ne
I would
saurais
say,
trop redire
feeding
ici
our relationship as well.
combien nous avons
And
été heureux
I
de
can
voir
only
votre choix qui
tell you
correspondait à
once
vos
again
engagements
how pleased we
historiques et
were
vos
with
engagements de
your
campagne,
choices that very much
de
match your
revenir
history and your campaign
sur les grands sujets
commitments.
internationaux, qu'il s'agisse du climat ou de la
The
santé.
fact that you're back on major international challenges
Cela
such
change
as
la donne.
health and
Et là où nous
climate,
avons pu
it is
résister pendant quelques
really a
années,
new
nous avons
deal.
pu réengager
And
les efforts.
we've been
Et en
resisting
cette
for a
journée
number of
mondiale
years,
de lutte contre
and
le
now
sida,
we're being able to
je veux
re-engage
ici,
with you.
dire
And
de
on
concert
this
avec vous
day
combien nous
of
continuons
World AIDS
à tenir
Day
cet agenda en
as
effet
well, we
d'éradication en
are
2030
very much
et combien nos deux pays ont de
continuing to
concert
work
œuvré ces dernières
to
années
deliver by
dans le financement du Fonds
2030.
mondial,
And I would like
dont
to
nous
say
sommes
how
les
much has been
principaux
achieved by both our
contributeurs,
countries,
pour lutter évidemment contre le VIH,
which are
mais également
major
contre
contributors to the
la
global
malaria et
fund,
plusieurs autres
to deal
virus
with,
qui
of course,
ravagent en particulier les
eradicate
pays les plus fragiles et les
AIDS, but
populations les
also
plus fragiles.
malaria
Nous
and a number of
continuerons
other
cet effort sans
diseases
relâche. C'est la même
for the benefit
détermination
of the
qui
most
prévaut
fragile
dans notre relation
population.
pour
And
avancer
the same
ensemble sur
goes
les
in our
sujets
relationship when we're
de
doing
climat
everything we
et de
can
biodiversité.
to deal with
Au-delà de cette volonté
climate
d'avancer
change and
sur les
biodiversity.
innovations et
Of
un
course, we
agenda
want
de
more
solutions sur le
innovation, we
climat,
want to
nous avons
promote
acté là
solutions
aussi
on climate
plusieurs
change, but we
initiatives
also very
lors de cette
concretely
visite d'État.
acknowledge a number of initiatives
Bâtir
in
des
this
solutions de
respect on the
financement
occasion of
innovants
this
pour aider les
state
pays
visit.
émergents et les pays
It
les
is
plus
about
fragiles
finding a
pour leur
new
permettre
financing means for the most
nous accompagner
fragile
sur cette
countries,
route
emerging countries,
du développement et du climat.
to support
Et à
them
cet
on
égard,
both development and
vous aurez un rôle
climate change.
essentiel dans le
And in this
sommet que nous
respect, you
comptons
will be
organiser
playing a key role in the
à
summit
l'été
we intend to
prochain de
organize
nouveaux
next
partenariats
summer
entre le Nord et le
to
Sud,
build
qui s'inscrit
a new
pleinement d'abord
partnership
dans la
between
logique
the
de ce que
North
nous
and
avons
the
fait
South.
ensemble pour
And this is very
réallouer
much
plus de
along
moyens vers les pays du Sud,
the
mais aussi
lines
de
of
l'agenda de réforme de nos
providing more
institutions
resources to the
multilatérales
southern countries
financières,
and as
qui
well
est indispensable pour
reforming
réussir cet
our
objectif,
our
en
main
particulier
international
réforme de la Banque
financial
mondiale et amélioration
institutions
de nos
with the
instruments
reform of
financiers
the
existants. Et
World
puis en
Bank
matière de
and
biodiversité,
number of
nous avons eu
international
l'occasion hier de
existing
parler
tools.
avec le caucus
And regarding
compétent.
the
Nous avons eu des
biodiversity,
discussions à
we
plusieurs
had this lunch yesterday with
reprises
the
ensemble.
relevant
Notre
caucus.
volonté est là aussi d'avoir
And
un
here again,
agenda
our willingness is to have an
extrêmement
agenda which is
ambitieux
extremely
et
ambitious.
en particulier,
In particular,
nous œuvrerons
we
ensemble
will
pour
be
préparer le
working
One
together
Forest Summit qui se
to
tiendra
prepare for
sur le
the
sol
One
africain au
Forest
Gabon à
Summit
la fin du
in
premier
Gabon, in
trimestre
Africa,
prochain.
at
Ce
the end
sujet
of the next
étant aussi au cœur
semester.
ce que vous
And
voulez
this topic,
soulever
of course, is very
avec
much at the heart
les États
of
africains que vous accueillerez dans
the ones
quelques
you will
jours
be
à Washington.
covering with
Et donc
the
là aussi, sur
African
ce volet,
countries
il
coming
y a
to
une
Washington
forte
in a few
convergence
days.
entre nos vues.
So
Enfin,
here again, a
nous
strong
continuerons d'être
convergence
engagés
of
ensemble
views
dans la lutte
between us.
contre
And
le terrorisme et
lastly,
pour
we
la
will
paix.
continue to work
En
together
un
to
à vos côtés, j'ai
fight
évidemment une pensée
terrorism
pour nos
and
soldats
to act for
qui
peace. And
sont
of course,
tombés
my thoughts
en
go
Afghanistan, au
to our
Proche-Moyen-Orient, en
soldiers who
Afrique
fell in
durant ces
Afghanistan,
dernières années
in the Middle
pour se
East,
battre
in
pour
Africa over the past few
la
years,
sécurité
to fight for
de ces régions du monde
the
et de nos pays.
security of these regions
Et je veux
of the world
ici
and of our
une fois
countries.
encore vous redire
And
notre
here again,
engagement. Nous
please allow me
continuons à être
to say
engagés
once again
dans
that
notre
we're
coalition
committed
internationale Proche et
within our
Moyen-Orient
international
à travers
coalition in the Middle East
notre action militaire et nous
through our
continuerons de
military
l'aide de
action,
manière
and
très
we will
étroite
continue to
car nous
do
n'avons pas
so
fini ce combat.
because
Et
this
je
fight
pense
is
qu'il est
not over
important de
yet,
le rappeler à tous
and it
nos
is
alliés
important
et tous
to
nos partenaires. Nous
remind
devons continuer d'agir contre le
all of our
terrorisme
allies
islamique
and
dans
partners
le
that
Proche
we
et
need to
Moyen-Orient.
continue to
Cet
work
agenda n'est pas
to
terminé.
fight
Et je voulais vous remercier
terrorism
aussi
in
pour
the
l'aide
Middle
précieuse
East and
que
in the Near
vous nous avez
East.
apportée durant toutes ces dernières années et que vous
And I
continuez de
would
nous
like to
apporter
thank
dans
you
la
for
lutte
all
contre le
your very
terrorisme
valuable
au
support
Sahel et en Afrique de
over the
l'Ouest.
past few
Cette
years
aide est précieuse et nous a permis ces
for the
dernières
fight
années,
against
y
terror,
compris ces dernières semaines,
including in the Sahel
d'avoir des
in
résultats
Africa.
extrêmement concrets.
And that enabled us
Et
to
donc
have
nous
some very
continuerons là
concrete
aussi
results,
d'œuvrer
including
ensemble.
over the
Je
past
pourrais
few weeks.
également passer
And we will
l'après-midi
continue
de
to
concert avec
work
vous à
together.
égrener tous les
I
sujets
could
sur lesquels
carry
nous
on
travaillons ensemble,
during the
de
entire
l'Indo-Pacifique et
afternoon.
plus
We could talk about
particulièrement
the
de la réorganisation de
Indo-Pacific,
notre présence
the
dans
way,
l'océan Indien.
particularly we're
Je voudrais avoir un
reorganizing
mot
our
pour,
presence in the Indian
au
Ocean.
fond, peut-être remettre les choses dans le bon ordre.
To put things
Cher
right,
Joe, tu as eu l'élégance de
dear Joe,
remercier la France pour son
you
aide
elegantly
sur l'accord
thank
qui a été
France
trouvé historique
for
entre Israël et le Liban.
the role we played in the historical agreement between
Nous avons fait le
Israel and
maximum pour
Lebanon.
aider à
We
finaliser
did our
Je crois
utmost
quand même que l'honnêteté me conduit à
to
dire que
finalise
c'est
the
essentiellement
accord,
vous qui avez
but
fait le
let me
travail.
be honest, I think most
Donc
of
je pense
the
que
work
dans ce
was yours.
moment, c'était un travail
So
essentiel
I think
et je veux tout particulièrement vous en remercier pour le
the
Liban
work
qui
of
nous
the
est si
utmost
cher
importance,
et
and
qui avait besoin de
Lebanon
cet
is so
accord
dear to us, and
au-delà
they
des
needed
sujets qui
this
sont au cœur de
accord
l'agenda libanais pour les prochaines semaines et les
in
prochains
the
mois.
context of
Voilà, mesdames et
everything
messieurs, ce que
that
je souhaitais
is
dire.
still on the
Et
agenda
pour
for
finir,
Lebanon in the coming weeks and months.
je souhaitais vraiment
Ladies
remercier
and
le
gentlemen,
président
I very
Joe
much
Biden parce
meant
que
to
ce qu'il a
thank
dit, je peux
President Biden
le dire à son endroit.
because
Ce n'est pas
what
simplement un
he said,
dirigeant
I
avec
can
lequel nous
say it as
partageons
well. You're
beaucoup de
not
valeurs,
just a leader
beaucoup de
with
combats,
whom we
c'est
share
un dirigeant avec lequel
many
nous avons
values, many battles.
des discussions très franches et
You're
très
someone
directes,
with whom we
respectueuses et
are having some
engagées
very
sur
frank
tous
and
les sujets.
respectful
C'est aussi
discussions
devenu un
on
ami
any topic.
et je
And
tenais à te remercier
you
pour
also became a
l'accueil
friend.
qui nous est
And
fait,
so
l'honneur qui nous est fait,
thank you ever so
mais
much
surtout
for this warm welcome
l'importance dans ce
and
moment
for the
de pouvoir passer
importance
du temps
of
ensemble et
being
prendre des
able to
décisions
spend
pour notre
some
avenir
time
commun.
together
Merci
now.
infiniment.
So important for our joint future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emmanuel. I began to refer to him privately as my closer. That deal with Lebanon and Israel, we did negotiate, but we needed a closer to get the job done, and you did it, and thank you very much. All right, we're going to take, we're each going to call on two people, a total of two people, a total of four all told. And the first questioner is going to be from AFP, Miss End.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would have a question for you and one for the French President, if I may. To you first, you now say that you're going to better coordinate, especially your green economic policy. But yesterday, Emmanuel Macron said that the Inflation Reduction Act is in fact super aggressive, I quote, for European companies. Does this mean that you are ready to grant exceptions, exemptions of derogations to European industries? And now my question to you, Monsieur le Président, est-ce que vous allez repartir de Washington avec l'assurance
Mr. President, will you leave Washington with the assurance
européenne pour faire face aux subventions massives qui ont été votées ici?
that
Et plus généralement, vous avez dit hier que
you will be able to deal with these massive intentions?
Joe Biden faisait courir le risque de fragmenter l'Occident. Est-ce qu'on peut penser
The journalist doesn't have a microphone.
qui, d'une certaine manière, risquait de créer des divisions?
Do you think there's a risk of generating divisions?
I'll answer the last question since I didn't hear any of it. I didn't understand a word of it, so I'll answer it.
And we'll take care of it.
No, look, the United States makes no apology, and I make no apology since I wrote it for the legislation you're talking about. But there are occasions when you write a massive piece of legislation, and that has almost $368 billion for the largest investment in climate change of all of history. And so there's obviously going to be glitches in it and need to reconcile changes in it. For example, there's a provision in it that says that there is an exception for anyone who has a free trade agreement with us. Well, that was added by a member of the United States Congress who acknowledges that he just meant allies. He didn't mean literally free trade agreement. So there's a lot we can work out. But the essence of it is we're going to make sure that the United States continues, and just as I hope Europe will be able to continue, not to have to rely on anybody else's supply chain. We are our own supply chain, and we share that with Europe and all of our allies, and they will, in fact, have the opportunity to do the same thing. So there's tweaks that we can make that can fundamentally make it easier for European countries to participate and or be on their own. But that is something that is a matter to be worked out. There is no fundamental, it was never intended when I wrote the legislation, never intended to exclude folks who were cooperating with us. That was not the intention. The intention was to make sure we no longer in a position when there was a pandemic in Asia and China decided they're going to no longer sell us computer chips. We invented the damn things. So anyway, but my point is we're back in business. Europe is back in business, and we're going to continue to create manufacturing jobs in America, but not at the expense of Europe.
Ce que nous avons échangé avec le président Biden, ce que le président Biden vient d'ailleurs de dire, ce que j'évoquais hier, mes propos copiés, c'est simple. Les États-Unis d'Amérique ont pris une législation pour l'industrie de leur pays, avec un objectif que nous partageons. Créer plus d'emplois, créer des opportunités pour les classes moyennes et réussir à accélérer la transition climatique. La réalité, c'est que les conséquences, et notre discussion a permis de parfaitement montrer que ce n'est absolument pas l'objectif des États-Unis de le faire. Mais une des conséquences de cette législation est que sur des projets qui étaient en train de se développer sur le continent européen, l'écart de subvention est tel que ces projets risquent de tomber. Ça n'est pas l'intention du président Biden. J'ai pu hier d'ailleurs discuter avec plusieurs sénateurs et représentants Congrès. Ils m'ont assuré que ça n'était pas non plus leur intention. Et donc, la France n'est pas venue ici demander en quelque sorte pour son économie telle ou telle exception. On est venu partager la manière dont nous visions les conséquences de cette réglementation et à un moment où, au fond, l'actualité nous somme d'agir encore plus de manière concertée ensemble face aux défis mondiaux, de resynchroniser, comme j'ai pu le dire, c'est-à-dire de trouver une dynamique positive nouvelle pour se dire, clarifier quels sont nos objectifs et comment agir ensemble. La discussion de ce matin pour moi a été parfaitement claire. Et j'ai senti d'ailleurs la même intention chez l'ensemble des membres du Sénat comme des représentants hier. La volonté du président Biden est de refaire ici une industrie forte et d'avoir, en quelque sorte, de sécuriser des solutions technologiques pour l'avenir. La France veut exactement la même chose pour elle-même. Et nous nous battons jour et nuit depuis un peu plus de 5 ans pour faire la même chose dans notre pays, ce qui nous a permis de stopper près de 15 ans de désindustrialisation en France et de recréer des emplois industriels et des solutions dans notre pays. On veut juste continuer de faire cela. Et donc on va le faire ensemble, c'est pourquoi nous avons décidé, en lien avec les autres Européens, la Commission européenne, d'avoir un travail qui doit être un travail maintenant technique, pour que, en quelque sorte, ces effets en domino qui pouvaient exister sur les projets qui étaient en train de se développer en Europe soient réglés. On veut réussir ensemble, pas l'un contre l'autre. Ça a été clair, c'est ce qui ressort de ce matin. Et c'est exactement la philosophie que je partage. C'est celle dont nous avons besoin.
Bonjour Messieurs les Présidents, William Galibert pour la radio RTL. Pour compléter la question de ma collègue, Monsieur Biden, en français on dit qu'il n'y a pas d'amour, qu'il n'y a que des preuves d'amour. Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que votre ami français repart entièrement rassuré, que vous avez rassuré sur les questions économiques vos alliés européens? Et puis, pourrait-on avoir quelques précisions supplémentaires? Est-ce que vous vous êtes fixé, Monsieur Macron, des échéances précises pour ces discussions économiques, des secteurs précis sur lesquels vous attendez peut-être des aménagements des politiques économiques américaines?
Pour être très clair, d'abord, nous avons un travail en européen qu'on va faire. C'est que sur les semi-conducteurs, l'hydrogène, les batteries, notre industrie, on va continuer d'avancer en européen. Et nous ne sommes pas là pour, en quelque sorte, demander des preuves d'amour. On était là pour se mettre d'accord sur une stratégie et clarifier les choses qui méritaient de l'être. Je considère que la discussion l'a fait. Maintenant, nous avons notre propre travail. On ne peut pas demander aux États-Unis d'Amérique de prendre une loi pour régler les problèmes de l'Europe. Donc nous, en Européens, on doit aller plus vite et plus fort pour avoir la même ambition et réussir justement à se mettre aussi en synchronie. Et de l'autre côté, nous avons clarifié aujourd'hui les choses. Il y a plusieurs déjà forums de discussion qui existent. Et c'est dans les prochaines semaines et les prochains mois que nous allons clarifier ça. Mais ça va assez vite, parce qu'en fait, nos projets sont en train de se développer. Donc, pour moi, il y a une grande clarté stratégique dans les échanges de ce matin. Il y a eu beaucoup de sincérité, beaucoup de franchise. Et donc à partir de là, je considère que les discussions des prochains jours qu'il y aura déjà avec la Commission européenne, les discussions qu'on aura dans les prochaines semaines, en lien étroit avec nos partenaires allemands, nos autres partenaires européens et la Commission et l'administration américaine, vont permettre de clarifier sans difficulté ce sujet. Je repars confiant mais aussi lucide sur ce qui est aussi à faire du côté européen.
Confident, but as well lucid as to what remains to be done on the European side, which is a good thing.
I'm confident. That's my answer. Okay, who's the next question? Got my list here.
this topic.
Is it my turn to call on someone? Right? Okay. How about NPR, Tom Marquis?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a domestic question for you, and then, Mr. Macron, I have a question for you about Ukraine. But first, President Biden, do the freight rail workers deserve more than 1 day of paid sick leave, like millions of Americans have? And if so, why didn't you negotiate for that when you were helping to negotiate that contract that you now want Congress to impose?
I love you guys. I negotiated a contract no one else could negotiate. The only thing that was left out was whether or not it was paid leave. You know, I've been trying to get paid leave, not just for rail workers, for everybody. But that other team, they're called the Republicans, they voted against it. They said we couldn't do it. We're one of the few nations in the world that don't have paid leave for our workers. And so what we're doing is we can't afford to have, and by the way, in the meantime, they got a 45% increase in salary, et cetera. There's a lot of good things that happened in that. And if, in fact, this shuts down over the question of 1 to 5 paid, or 7 or 9, or whatever the numbers would be negotiated of paid leave days, it's going to immediately cost 750,000 jobs and cause a recession. And so what I've made it really clear is that what was negotiated was so much better than anything they ever had, that it's worth, and they all signed on to it, by the way. There are only 4 unions out of the 13 or 14 that didn't agree. So the majority at the time was that I presented it. They asked me to do it. I presented it. They all signed on. But here's the story. It doesn't mean because we are going to pass this, God willing, by Friday, by the time, by the weekend, that I'm going to back off of paid leave. I made it really clear. I'm going to continue to fight for paid leave for not only rail workers, but for all American workers. I imagine it may surprise some of our European friends that there's no paid leave in the United States of America. We're one of the few major countries in the world that don't have it. And it's about time. And so that's the context in which this all took place. And labor signed on to it as well, as you recall, initially. There were 4 unions out of the, I think, 13 or 14 that didn't like it. But I think we're going to get it done, but not within this agreement. Not within this agreement. We're going to avoid the rail strike, keep the rails running, keep things moving, and I'm going to go back and we're going to get paid leave, not just for rail workers, but for all workers.
President Macron, here in the U.S., President Biden is asking Congress for $38 billion of additional funding for support for Ukraine. There's been some pushback from Republicans in Congress saying that they cannot continue to write a blank check. So do you have confidence that the United States will be able to continue supporting Ukraine's defense in the way it has over the past year, in the months going forward? And did you talk to President Biden about trying to urge Ukraine to negotiate to end this war, especially with winter bearing down and the effects on energy prices?
Look, I do thank President Biden and his administration for the great commitment they had vis-à-vis Ukrainian people. And let me just say that our 2 nations are made of values and history. And what is at stake in Ukraine is not just very far from here, in a small country somewhere in Europe, but it's about our values, and it's about our principles, and it's about what we agreed together in the UN Charter, protecting sovereignty, in territorial integrity. And this is why I do believe that having the US strongly supporting the Ukrainians in that time is very important, not just for the Ukrainians. For the Europeans, we are. This is why we do thank you for this solidarity. But for the stability of our world today. Because if we consider that we can abandon the country and abandon the full respect of these principles, it means that there is no possible stability in this world. So I think it's extremely important to have you so much committed. So I'm confident because I think your people and your representative do endorse and understand this objective. We will follow up our own support. We increased our military support. We increased our economic support. We are increasing our humanitarian support. And for the second question you raised, let me tell you that we will never urge the Ukrainians to make a compromise which will not be acceptable for them. Because they are so brave and they defend precisely their lives, their nation, and our principles. And because it will never build a sustainable peace. If we want a sustainable peace, we have to respect the Ukrainians to decide the moment and the conditions in which they will negotiate about their territory and their future.
This will be the last question.
Emmanuel Macron doit s'entretenir dans les prochains jours, les prochaines semaines avec Vladimir Poutine. Le lien est maintenu depuis le début de la guerre. Vous n'avez pas toujours été d'accord avec cela. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui vous approuvez l'approche du président français? Une deuxième question pour vous deux, alors que la guerre en Ukraine semble aujourd'hui un tournant. Est-ce qu'il vous semble réaliste que le président Zelensky conditionne l'ouverture de négociations à un retour, je veux dire, dans le giron ukrainien de la
and that is the return of Crimea to Ukraine?
Look, there's one way for this war to end, the rational way. Putin to pull out of Ukraine, number one. But it appears he's not going to do that. He's paying a very heavy price for failing to do it, but he's inflicting incredible carnage on the civilian population of Ukraine, bombing nurseries, hospitals, children's homes. It's sick what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, I have no immediate plans to contact Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin is, let me choose my words very carefully. I'm prepared to speak with Mr. Putin if, in fact, there is an interest in him deciding he's looking for a way to end the war. He hasn't done that yet. If that's the case, in consultation with my French and my NATO friends, I'll be happy to sit down with Putin to see what he has in mind. He hasn't done that yet. In the meantime, I think it's absolutely critical what Emmanuel said. We must support the Ukrainian people. The idea that Putin is ever going to defeat Ukraine is beyond comprehension. Imagine them trying to occupy that country for the next 2, 5, 10, 20 years, if they could. He's miscalculated every single thing he initially calculated. He thought he'd be greeted with open arms by the Russian-speaking portions of the Ukrainian population. Go back and read his speech when he invaded, when I said they were going to invade, and they did when we said they were. Go back and read the speech he made. He talked about him with needing to be another Peter the Great. He talked about the need for the people that Kyiv is the mother lode of Russian identity in the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. He's just miscalculated across the board. And so the question is, what is his decision? How does he get himself out of the circumstance he's in? I'm prepared, if he's willing to talk, to find out what he's willing to do, but I'll only do it in consultation with my NATO allies. I'm not going to do it on my own. Thank you.
Sur la question que vous posez et les préconditions, les conditions qui sont mises par le président ukrainien, je pense que ce qui est important pour nous tous de regarder, c'est qu'au moment même où l'Ukraine est en train de résister, de subir des crimes de guerre, de subir des attaques sur ses infrastructures civiles, de mener des contre-offensives, le président Zelensky a proposé un plan de paix en 10 points. Et je pense que notre devoir, c'est d'engager le travail avec lui, parce qu'il y a une vraie volonté de la part des Ukrainiens d'aller sur le terrain de la discussion. Et nous le reconnaissons et nous le saluons. Et je peux ici vous dire, pour avoir été pendant plusieurs années responsable du suivi de ce qu'on appelait le format Normandie, et donc de la mise en œuvre des accords de Minsk. La dernière réunion qu'il y a eu entre le président Zelensky et le président Poutine, elle date, c'est d'ailleurs la seule, de décembre 2019. Et nous étions à cette époque-là avec la chancelière Merkel. Je peux vous dire que j'ai vu un président sincère qui voulait discuter et négocier. Et le président Zelensky, depuis son élection jusqu'au mois de février dernier, il n'a eu de cesse de vouloir négocier. Celui qui a décidé de lancer une guerre, c'est le président Poutine. J'en ai été le témoin direct, y compris par le déplacement que j'ai pu faire en Russie et en Ukraine au début du mois de février. Donc il est légitime que le président Zelensky ait des préconditions pour négocier. Maintenant, nous devons travailler la substance de ce qui peut être à terme un accord de paix. Et ensuite, c'est l'évolution des prochaines semaines et des prochains mois qui nous dira le moment qui est le bon et le choix des Ukrainiens. Une fois qu'on a dit ça, je continuerai en effet à parler au président Poutine, et d'ailleurs on s'en a entretenu ce matin avec le président Biden, parce que nous avons constamment essayé aussi d'éviter des escalades et d'obtenir des choses très concrètes. Et donc en particulier, j'aurai une discussion sur la question de la sûreté et de la sécurité des centrales nucléaires dans les zones contestées, en particulier celle de Zaporizhzhia, parce que je pense que le travail que la France mène depuis plusieurs mois, et d'ailleurs depuis le début du conflit, rappelez-vous, on l'a fait dès le mois de mars, sur la centrale de Tchernobyl, en soutien du très bon travail fait par l'AIEA et son directeur général, M. Grossi, est important. Donc il faut continuer de faire cela et d'engager. Nous continuerons. Voilà. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, please remain in your seats until the official delegations have departed.